Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of the Ivory Tower video series exploring the museums and cultural heritage sites of Korea. Now, here on Ivory Tower, we've been to some interesting museums, from penis parks to caves to aquariums, but for my money, this could be one of the most interesting and, quite frankly, strange museums we've been to yet. It's the National Kimchi Museum in the COEX Mall in Seoul, South Korea. Now, what is kimchi? Well, kimchi, for those of you who don't know, is a slimy, spicy, usually red treat enjoyed in almost every meal in Korea. Let's go learn a little bit more about this delicious treat. So what is kimchi? Well, for those who haven't spent some time living in Korea or aren't that familiar with Korean food, kimchi boils down to about 4 basic ingredients. The first one being salt. Since kimchi was originally and still is a way of storing and preserving food, salt is of the most importance for the process because without salt it wouldn't store. And then once you have your salt, you take a main ingredient, like say green cabbage. That's the most typical type of kimchi. The general red and white kimchi that you think of is Korean cabbage, or you could also take something like salted and fermented fish. These types of kimchi tend to be a little rough on the foreign palate. I know I'm not the biggest fan of fermented fish kimchi. It can be a little intense, but it does have some nice bonuses every once in a while. Or you can do a green onion kimchi. In my experience, these types of kimchi are usually served with a pork or something a little fatty that cuts, and it is capable of cutting through some of that fat. Or you could do a white radish kimchi. White radish kimchi is my absolute favorite type of kimchi. It's always a happy day on the lunch line when I see white radish kimchi. So, you've made your kimchi. Now what? Well, kimchi is traditionally stored in what is called a haeju-dak, which is a brown glazed earthenware pot, which is then often buried in the ground during the winter to keep the kimchi from freezing. And a haeju-dak looks a lot like this. So this museum is about more than just looking at pieces of plastic cabbage and radish. It's about teaching people an important part of the Korean cultural heritage. And it also teaches people about the regions of Korea. Here we have an interactive map where you can look at a province and it'll tell you a little bit about the kind of kimchi that's most famous in that province. Currently I'm living in Gangwon province. I did that. And it's famous for a type of kimchi made out of roots, which I didn't realize that. Alright, let's move on. Oh, and what you see behind me are called stokdae. In traditional Korean villages, they were erected and placed at the entrance of the village as a sign for the village's wish for peace and prosperity. And this trend continues in Korea. If you actually go to any, or at least most Korean schools, they have some stokdae somewhere near the entrance, usually again as a sign for the wish of peace and prosperity. So one of the perks of coming to the Kimchi Museum is going to the kimchi tasting room. Here I have my personal favorite type of kimchi. It's a radish cube kimchi made from white radish, or daikon radish as it's called here. Let's give it a taste. It's very crunchy, and this is quite spicy because it uses a red pepper paste they call gochujang. And trust me, it isn't rude for me to talk with my mouth open. It's culturally acceptable in Korea. So if you're viewing this video in Korea, it's not rude, but if you're viewing it somewhere else, I'm being a horrible bore right now. So it's crunchy, very, very spicy. It's not going to make my eyes water or anything, but it definitely has a bit of a kick to it. What other notes do you get? It's kind of a very green, fresh taste. It's quite difficult. You watch the food cooking shows and you think, oh, anyone could describe how something tastes. Also, some grassy notes. Would go delightfully with fish or chicken, or a Chardonnay maybe. Let's go taste some more kimchi. Here we have a white kimchi. Now this doesn't have any of the red pepper paste and the gochujang. It's preserved mainly with salt and vinegar. Cheers. So this is a lot different flavor profile. It's a little sweeter. Again, crunchy. I think they're really difficult. Tastes like white kimchi. If you haven't had white kimchi, you should taste some, and then you'll know what this tastes like. Would be my professional advice. Alright, thank you. So despite the popularity and ubiquity of kimchi in Korean society, kimchi making is a dying art. As more people are getting busy lives and busy jobs, they find themselves not having the time to make kimchi in their daily life. And as the older generation is passing away, so too is the tradition of making kimchi by hand. And that's being replaced by a lot of big factory kimchi. In fact, this museum is owned by one of the big kimchi factories in Korea. So even though kimchi is such an integral part of Korean society, it's slowly becoming a less and less common art form. One last thought before we leave this place about the future of kimchi. Did you know that kimchi is one of the few specialized foods that has gone into space? Yes. When a Korean astronaut went to the International Space Station a few years ago, he decided that he couldn't live without kimchi, to the point that Korean scientists made a space-ready kimchi to bring with him on the trip. This was difficult because of all the different microorganisms in kimchi that they were worried might wreak some havoc on the space station. They had to make a very specialized form of space kimchi. So from the past to the future, kimchi will continue to play a vital and an essential role in Korean culture. Thanks for joining us.